Welcome to another live stream. So, as per usual, if anybody could just let me know this is actually working, that would be fantastic. And what I'm going to do, give me 1 second to get this lined up here first. All right, so what I'm going to do to start, I'm going to talk about kind of some of the pros and cons to setting a deadline for your cut versus just kind of letting it go as you see fit. And then once I'm done with that, I'll go ahead and answer any questions you have live. And feel free to, if you want to, just post them in there now, and I'll certainly get to it once I am done. That way I've got them all lined up and we can just hop right to it. If you could, let me know where you're from. I always like to know where people are tuning in from. And let's get to it. And if there's any problems, please let me know. So there's a saying out there. Maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't. It's action requires urgency, results require patience. So I always kind of like that, and this is kind of why I want to talk about deadlines, because sometimes, not always, everyone's always different, but sometimes if there's no deadline, then you don't feel like there's any urgency. And then if you don't have any urgency behind your cut, you have a hard time taking action. And if you don't take action, well, you're not going to get results. And then of course, as you know, it requires a lot of patience. Results don't happen very fast. And honestly, if they happen too fast, that's usually a negative thing. So we always have to be patient with things. So whether or not you should put a deadline in your cut just kind of depends on your own personality and what works best for you. And I wanted to kind of just get into, okay, like, how do you know if it's best for you or not? And to me, like, what's the most optimal thing? I think not having a deadline and just adjusting based on how things are going is, quote unquote, the most optimal way to do things. So the reason I say that is because you just never know how things are going to go. Sometimes it's going to go better than you think. Sometimes it's going to go worse than you think. And you need to adjust according to the plan. You never want to get into a position where you feel like, well, it's not working, so what's the point in just giving up? But being able to just adjust on the fly allows you to do what's necessary to get where you want to be. Whereas if you are tied to some sort of deadline and it doesn't go quite as well as you want, by the time you get to the end of the deadline, you might be kind of disappointed with that. However, if you have a really hard time sticking to the plan, this can happen quite frequently, because if you feel like there's no end date and you don't know when that's coming, it can sometimes feel like that it's just like it's never going to be over. So it kind of feels like, well, what's the purpose of sticking so close to the plan when I've got to do this for so long? I need to give myself some more flexibility and everything. And what can happen is it can just kind of drag on for a really long time. And then especially if you're not sticking to the plan well and you're having a lot of ups and downs, overeating bouts, back and forth all over the place, what happens is there's a lot of negative things to that, not the least of which is you're still going to see some of these slowdowns in metabolism, right? Your body's still going to start guarding against those lower calories, but you're not going to see the fat loss you would have. So now what happens? Well, now it's going to take even longer. Now you're going to have to get that much lower calorie. You're going to have to do that much more cardio. And it gets into this position where it just really drags on and makes it much more difficult than it needs to be. Whereas if you just get in, hit it hard and get it done and get out, it doesn't drag on too long. And there can be a lot of value to that. And you don't want to make it any harder than it needs to be. Is anybody out there? If anybody could just let me know you could hear me. Let me see. Does it say? Okay, we've got viewers on. So I'm assuming you can hear me. If you can't, then you probably would have said so by now. So anyways, one of the problems I think a lot of people have when they're in a cutting phase is you kind of get that FOMO, right? So like anytime you're going out to eat or going out with friends, you feel like, well, I need to have more flexibility. Okay, thank you, Tracy. I was starting to worry there a little bit. It can really kind of feel like, well, it's this like constant battle between I should give myself some more grace and allow myself to have more fun and not let like fitness be my everything versus, well, I really want to do what's necessary to get results. Now, if you keep falling into just kind of totally letting go every time you have something coming up, you can really keep setting yourself back quite frequently. And no matter what, you can't screw everything up. But if it happens over and over and over again, you're not really going to get anywhere. And to me, I think there's a lot of value in just saying, okay, like I'm gonna set a cut. I'm gonna set a deadline and say, okay, I'm gonna cut for, this is just a random number, but let's say I'm gonna cut for 16 weeks, and I'm just gonna do what's necessary for those 16 weeks. I'm gonna hit it hard, and then I'm gonna get out. And just know that the time for more fun and more food and more flexibility and all that type of stuff, that's coming down the road. And if you do this thing right, you're gonna spend way more of your time not dieting than you do dieting. But there can be a lot of value in that, because now you go, okay, like I can see the end. I know where the end is. I can do what's necessary now to get through this, knowing when the end's coming. Whereas if you feel like I just have no idea, it can keep you from kind of sticking to the plan. So, and keep in mind too, like, just because you set an end date doesn't mean you couldn't extend it when you get there. Like if you say I'm going to do 16 weeks and you get to the end and you're like, you know what, I'm feeling really good. I'm having no problem sticking to the plan. I'm still seeing great results. Let's extend it another, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or whatever it may be. And sometimes that can be a good combo too. Like instead of creating a deadline to begin with, maybe you just see how things go. And then as you start getting closer to your goal, and now you might be feeling more run down and having a harder time sticking with things. Sometimes when that happens, now you set the deadline and say, okay, I'm really starting to struggle here. I'm having a lot of on again, off again approach, but I really want to get there. So let's set a deadline of 4 weeks from now. I'm going to stop the cut, no matter what, right? I'm going to stop the cut. And then you go, okay, like I can do anything for 4 weeks, right? And then you hit it, get it done, and get out. So again, there's no right or wrong answer. Nothing's ever universally true. And you got to kind of know yourself a little bit and what works better for you. And I find for the most part, the deadlines are great for people who really struggle to stick to the plan and always feel like they're missing out on everything. Whereas if you don't struggle with sticking to the plan and you're going to follow through basically regardless, because you make that commitment, you say, I'm just going to do it no matter what, then not having a deadline is probably a better plan, because then it leaves you much more open-ended to do whatever is necessary to keep things going. But anyways, let's get into the Q&A. I've got four preloaded questions. If you have anything, please leave them in the comments of this video. Not the comments, but the live chat, I should say. I won't see the live comment or the comment on the actual video itself. Leave it in the live and we'll get to it. One thing I wanted to mention quickly before we get to it, I noticed today, let me get rid of that. I was loading up my website to let you know that if you want online coaching, you can head to my website, go to the coaching page, click this link down here, or up at the top. You probably can't see it right now, but it does say sign up here. Let me bring it down right here, sign up. And it does come with a 30-day money get back guarantee, meaning that if you sign up and decide you don't like it within 30 days, then you can get your money back, so there's no risk. However, the website wasn't loading, and I think it literally took like 7-8 minutes or something for it to load. So I don't know if there's an issue with my website right now, but if you can't get my site to load, I've got a message out to my web guy to see what's going on. But if you can't get it to load and you do want to sign up for coaching, you can always go to my Instagram, Colin DeWaay, click on the link tree, and there's another different application here. If you click on online coaching application, that'll bring up this Wufoo form that you can fill out, and that'll pop right up. So if you have any issues and you're looking for coaching, then that will work. So anyways, let's get to the questions. Pull this up a little bit. All right, been reverse dieting for 7 months, increased calories slowly for a total of 670 extra calories, went from 1430 to 2100, gained about 13 pounds. Some size on the biceps, some on the waist. Eating 1 gram per pound of body weight. Still have 2 months left of the reverse dieting as originally planned, but since I'm gaining too much, especially in the midsection, I'm thinking about ending it sooner. What would you advise on this? Ending it sooner, or maybe reducing calories back to 2000 or less to start the cut in 2 months? So I would stick with your original plan of continuing with the reverse, but you don't have to continuously add calories. At a certain point, you're going to reach a certain level of surplus for yourself that is beyond your normal kind of like metabolic genetic potential, so to speak, and you will keep gaining if you're at those calories. So when that happens, yes, you can back them off a little bit. So maybe around 2,000 calories or so will be your rough maintenance, and then you just hold that. So I always combine the reverse diet time with the time holding higher calories kind of together. So there's going to be a lot of value in keeping your calories up before jumping back into a cut again. And you can just kind of roughly maintain from there. So I always say, like, you can't reverse diet for too long, but you can absolutely reverse diet too short. And if you do it for too short of a time and your body doesn't respond well, you can kind of really set yourself back and kind of have to start that process over. So you're better off being really patient. So the more time you can take, the better. And you can just kind of roughly maintain. And that doesn't mean you won't necessarily gain any weight at all, but you can keep it down. And for what it's worth, I don't think 13 pounds in 7 months is anything horrendous or anything, and clearly some of that is muscle. I mean, you're seeing that, but I would just go ahead and just try to roughly maintain. You can dial it back a little bit until it's time to go, and then kind of take it from there, would be my suggestion. Speaking of maintenance, trying to maintain for the summer and enjoy myself. With summer comes more time with friends, drinks, treats, bigger meals. Absolutely. What do you think of an approach of hitting protein each day and continued resistance training and cardio, but otherwise going low calorie, low fats and carbs on normal days at home to leave room for and then it cuts off. Kind of weird. Well, I get the gist of it. So I think the gist of it is, can you just look at carbs, or excuse me, can you look at calories and protein and then have like high days and low days and just basically equate calories for the week to allow for some more flexibility on a couple of days? Absolutely, you can do that. This is what I do. So I'm in a rough maintenance, gaintaining phase, so to speak, and I eat 2,600 calories 5 days a week and 3,000 calories 2 days a week, sometimes 3 days a week, and I'm kind of like working my way up to having that third day here, and it just allows for more flexibility. Plus too, like if I find myself during the week, if I have a day where I've got a little bit of calories left, I've got 100 calories left or so, but I'm not overly hungry or anything, or I'm actually full, I'll just bang that up and leave it for the weekend. So a lot of times I actually have more than the 3,000 calories on the weekend day, and I play around with my calories quite a bit to allow that extra flexibility to be able to enjoy that, because at the end of the day, or I should say the end of the week, it really is your average for the week that really matters, not what you do on any singular day. And that can be so much more flexible, so much more sustainable for a lot of people. And absolutely, you can just hit calories and protein and just focus on that. I mean, that's a really good way to approach things in my mind. And kind of speaking specifically too about the summer, this has been something that's been on my mind more lately, and that is trying to plan around it. Like, there's never a great time to cut. Like, it's always going to be a challenge, but outside of kind of the holiday season, I think kind of the dead of the summer is probably the second worst time a year for most people to try to diet. Most people are wanting to have more fun and balance and flexibility, and like you say, go out and have fun and have some extra drinks and things like that, and enjoy the nice weather and everything. And trying to diet through that can be really challenging. And I think a lot of people start their summer shredding too close to the summer, and it ends up being harder than they thought, taking longer than they thought, and it extends into the summer. And then once it gets into that part of the summer, they really struggle with sticking to it, and then they feel bad that they're not following the plan, and it kind of goes back and forth. Whereas like they probably would have been better off just stopping it earlier and just enjoying the summer. So always look at your year and think, when is the best time for me to stick to a cutting phase, giving myself enough time plus more time in case it doesn't go as well as you think. And I think honestly, in the beginning of the year is for a lot of people one of the best times to do it, because it can sound kind of cliche because of the whole like New Year's resolution thing, but it's really not. I mean, there's a big difference between intentionally setting up a cutting phase for a certain time of the year after the holidays with the intention of doing that versus most people's like New Year's resolution is, oh crap, I gained 15 pounds over the holidays, let me try to get rid of this real quick. It's not really a resolution. It's just, damn it, I want to get rid of this extra weight. That's a really big difference. And so if you go through a nice reverse diet, you get your calories nice and high, you get your hormones and metabolism into a great place, you go through the holiday season with lots of food, lots of balance, lots of flexibility, hunger signals are good, so it's easier to not overdo it too much, and then you start your cut after that from a really good place metabolically. Now you have plenty of time to get down into a leaner state before the summer. Then you have time to also reverse diet into it so that your calories and your hunger signals are back into a good place leading into the summer, and that way you can enjoy it more. Now, not everyone can always just time it that way, but if you're not doing huge cuts or anything and don't have tons of weight to lose, that to me is a really good strategy for a lot of people. Now, again, as I always say, everyone's different. And if it works great for you to cut through the summer and it doesn't bother you, then by all means do it. Great, whatever works well for you. But if it's something that you constantly struggle with all the time, let's learn from that and create a better plan to leave yourself like that. Like there's no way I'm ever cutting through the summer, probably ever again. Like unless I have some crazy goal down the road of like doing a show again or sometime, which I have no intention of ever doing again, at least not at this point. Who knows, years down the road. But I can pretty much guarantee anytime I'm going to cut now, it's going to be that beginning of the year, kind of like I'm not out enjoying the nice weather and stuff, and I don't want as much flexibility. The holidays are done. It's just a great time to cut, and it leaves you plenty of time. So a little bit off topic, but not totally off topic. You know, it's just always something to consider. You want to consider time of year. You want to consider what your life looks like going into a cut when you're completely knowing that you're going to be totally stressed out. Work's going to be crazy. You're going to be pulled in every different direction. Probably not a great time to start one. Again, you can always do it. You can still do it. If you really set your mind to anything, you can basically do it. It's just going to be more of a challenge, but why make it any harder than you need to make it to, if that makes sense. Let's see, got a couple questions, I think. Got a new guy. All right. Let me get rid of this note for myself. I know you recommend reverse dieting the same amount of time as you cut. What if I'm assuming the cut was over a few years? That's like if you probably didn't actually cut for 3 years. There was probably a lot of on again, off again during that. So, but if you've got a long history of yo-yo dieting and stuff like that, then you know, taking 9 months to a year, to my mind, is a really good call. The longer, the better. A minimum of 6 months. Again, when I say these things, though, like you can't take any of this to the bank. Like I'm only going off of experience, what I've seen in people who've gone through these things, and how I've noticed people responding to things like that. But there's no like handbook that says, okay, if you've dieted for this month, you go this much. If you yo-yo dieted for this month, it's all recommendations. And again, going back to what I said before, the longer you do it, the better off you're going to be. That much I can pretty much guarantee. And I think that was kind of one of the questions coming up here. But there's definitely a large danger in starting a cut too soon. If your body's not ready, it's going to be a battle and not go very well, and then you're going to have to do it all over again. That could be very defeating. So the longer you can take, the better off you're going to be. And like right now, honestly, like if anyone out there is looking to start a reverse anytime soon, or is stuck and struggling, now is a really good time to start that. We're halfway through the year now. We've got 6 months until the end of the year. Start it now. Get your hunger hormones and get your metabolism up to a really good place starting now. Allow some more flexibility for the summer. Get through it. Get into the holiday season. Now you've got that 6 months banked up, and if you want to start a cut after that, you're going to be in a much better place, especially if you don't have an extreme history of dieting. After 6 months, you should be in a pretty good place for most people, but it always just depends, and everyone's a little bit different. But now's a really good time to start if you've been thinking about it. But I do have a video called How Long to Reverse Diet, I think. Take a look. Or how long should you reverse diet? How long should you reverse diet? This one right here. And this kind of answers some of those questions about like, okay, like you said, Rebecca, okay, if you went through like a specific cut, when I say as long as you dieted, that's more like, okay, you weren't dieting, now you went in and you hit it for 20 weeks and then you get out, right? Like that's a cutting phase to me. And then, okay, you want to go at least 20 weeks from that. Again, the more the better though. Like that's the bare minimum, and the bare minimum is risky. So, you know, if you can go like 2 times, even better, right? But it also talks about like, okay, if you've been yo-yo dieting for, you know, 5 years, you should probably think about going for this range, you know, 6 to 9 months or 9 to 12 months or over for people who've been doing decades of extreme dieting. Like you got to remember, the more extreme your history of dieting is, the longer it is, and the more ups and downs you've had, the more your body's going to be adapted. So there's a difference between not doing a lot of dieting but going into a specific cutting phase and then getting out versus just years and years and years and possibly decades of extreme approaches, starvation diets, yo-yo dieting, all that type of stuff. It's just a freaking disaster for the body. So hopefully that helped a little bit. I'm good, Jake. How are you? Can you do a 1 month diet break and get back to cutting? I have 8 kilograms left to cut to reach my goal. Absolutely. Yeah, you can definitely do so especially if things are still going okay. You know, I recommend taking, you know, 2-week diet breaks through your cutting phase regardless. I think they're extremely helpful, and much like the longer you reverse diet, the better off you're going to be. The longer you do a diet break, the more kind of adapted you're going to be to those higher calories, the more of a kind of refresher you get, and the better off you're going to be when it starts. So if you take a month and get back to it, that's great. Understand there's a difference between you're now towards the end of a cut, your body's fighting you hard, you're on very low calories, your cardio's through the roof, and you're just getting run down, and it's like, okay, it sounds like it's over. A 1 month break is probably not going to do a whole lot. I mean, maybe, but probably not. At that point, you probably need a full reverse diet. Where if it's just in the middle of a cutting phase, things are going okay, you've hit a plateau, but you have rooms to make adjustment and things like that, then yeah, take a month break, get right back to it. It should be good. If you're still seeing good results right now, you could take a break and come back and do exactly what you're doing now, and things should continue to go even better because you're in a better spot. So you can definitely take a break as long as you want. And like talking about the holiday season, what some people will do, depending on where they're at and what they want to accomplish, we'll have them in a cutting phase, and then as the dieting season the cutting, not the dieting season, the holiday season is coming up. We go, okay, let's take a break through the holidays. You can call it an extended diet break or a mini reverse diet, whatever you want to call it, but you know, they're still losing, they're still doing okay, but it's like, man, who wants to diet through the holidays? So you take November and December, or you know, October through December or whatever, and start eating around maintenance. Maybe also kind of start bringing calories up through it too, like I said, like a mini reverse diet. Take that time off, now you're going to be in a better spot. Come back afterwards after enjoying that, and then start your cutting phase back up again. That can absolutely work. So there's a lot of scenarios and a lot of things to always consider. And it's why I'm always saying, like, there's no one size fits all approach. There's not, okay, everyone does this, everyone does that. Like, there's a lot of scenarios. But yes, in your case, probably would be a good idea. All right, what have we got here? All right, what percentage of success people have doing reverse dieting for a long time versus shorter reverse dieting? What is the difference in success, if any? Is it something that's scientifically proven, or do you have any data showing the difference? No, there's definitely no data on this. Also, some coaches recommend to bring calories high rather quickly when reverse dieting, and then hold it for some time, 2 weeks or so, and then raise it again and hold. Any opinion regarding this? So, like I just said, everyone's totally different. Every scenario is different. Every starting position is different. Everybody's history is different. Everybody's genetics are different. Everybody's personality preferences is different. So there's no one way to do anything, and whatever's going to help somebody stick to their program better is better for them. In terms of like percentage of people who do long versus short, I can't give you any number. I can say definitively that people who reverse diet longer versus shorter tend to do much better. And again, the shorter reverse diet has much less likely to not work as well. But you also have to consider the starting position of somebody. Again, there's a very large difference between somebody who's starting a reverse diet because they've been doing extreme crash diets for the last 20 years versus somebody who had never dieted and then did a 12-week diet. And then now they're reverse dieting. Those are completely different situations, right? Like in that second person, 12-week reverse diet, you're probably good to go, right? They started from a good spot. They have no history of dieting, and they're great. The other person was absolutely trash. They need much more time, right? So again, like that's why I always say it's so different for everyone. But there's very, very, very little research on reverse dieting at this point. Everything that I typically say is through my own experience, through working with hundreds and hundreds of people at this point, and what I've seen happen and learning, and each person you work with, it's like another piece of data. Now that probably sounds wrong. Like I don't look at a client as data at all, but it is data at the same time. Like it's very individualized and everyone's different, but you tend to notice trends over time, right? And see how things tend to go for people when you do certain things. The longer I work with somebody, the better I'm going to know them and what works well for them. Some people have extremely fast adapting metabolisms, other people very slow. A fast adapting metabolism is great for reverse dieting because it means that you can make bigger increases and the body will adapt to that relatively quickly, and you can keep increasing, and they have a much harder time gaining weight because of that. But that works against them when it's time to cut, because now when you slash calories, now their body quickly adapts down to those low calories without seeing a lot of results, and you have to do it more aggressively. So there's pros and cons, right? Somebody who has a slower adaptive metabolism, they're going to have a much harder time increasing calories without gaining weight. But when it's time to cut, they're going to have a much easier time seeing results from the calorie drop that you have, and they'll be able to hold those calories for a longer period of time while seeing results. And I'm never going to know that without spending a lot of time working with somebody. So I've got some clients who I've literally had for almost 7 years now, going through different phases and stuff, and it's like I know them so well at this point, like I know exactly how they're going to respond. But somebody who comes to me and I've been with them for 3 weeks, it's kind of coming down to the trends that you typically see and seeing how things go, monitoring and adjusting accordingly. But the difference between bringing calories up quickly versus holding it, again, one goes down to, okay, if you have a super fast adapting metabolism, then you can make bigger increases and everything will go great. It also comes down to what's most important to that person. The faster you increase calories, the more likely you are to gain additional body fat, but the quicker you're going to get a lot of the benefits. Your hormones are going to improve quicker, your metabolism is going to improve quicker, you're going to feel better quicker, you're going to have more energy, you're going to be able to enjoy more food quicker, things like that. But if you want to do everything you can to gain as minimal fat as possible, then a slower approach is going to do that, but then it's going to take you a lot longer to get all those benefits. The majority of people say, I want a slow approach because I don't want to gain any fat. But then if you take that slow approach and you can't stick to the plan because you feel so restricted and you're having a hard time, remember the early stages of the reverse are often the hardest and the most hungry you'll ever be in your entire life. And that catches a lot of people by surprise. And just saying, well, I don't want to gain any fat is fine. But if you keep overeating because you feel overly restricted and so ravenously hungry because your calories are still so low, well, then it's going to work against you. And you're better off working faster and actually hitting your calories than increasing slowly and then continuing to overeat and gaining weight. So you can make bigger increases and hold for longer. You can make smaller increases and do every week. You can go based on how things are going. There's no right or wrong answers to any of this stuff. There's so many different ways to do this. And, your own personality and genetics play a big role in that, including how well you're going to adhere. You can say what's optimal until you're blue in the face, but it doesn't matter if you're not going to actually follow the plan, right? And that's usually the hardest part for a lot of people. Got some more. Okay to do a 2 to 3 week mini cut after 3 months of reverse dieting. It depends on your starting situation. I do have a video called when it's okay to mini cut or something like that, and it kind of talks about some of the different situations to look for. I would say for the majority of people, I think a mini cut is a terrible idea, especially if you're coming from a long history of dieting, a lot of yo-yo dieting, and you're trying to put yourself into a better position, but now you haven't given yourself anywhere near enough time. You're unlikely to see much with regards to results, and you can undo a lot of that improvements you've seen in your metabolism relatively quickly if your body's in a hyper what's the word I'm looking for, defensive mode, right, where it's trying to guard against those low calories as much as possible. If you give it to it again, it's going to go nope F this. So it's very dangerous. The only time I typically recommend a mini cut is if someone's in a very long building phase, they have no intention of cutting for a very long time. And like, say for instance, you're like, I'm literally going to go through a year and a half long building phase, and you get, or maybe even longer, maybe even 2 years, right? And maybe you get into a year into it and you're like, okay, like I'm getting a little bit uncomfortable here. You know, pants are fitting a little snug, but I'm not planning on dieting for another year. Okay, you know, hit a quick hard mini cut. You're in a good position. Now you can zap some of that fat off, get right back out and get back on with the process again. That's where it would make more sense, but that's a very small percentage of people who actually look to do mini cuts. And if you keep jumping into mini cuts when you're in a reverse diet, you're gonna really do more harm than good. Most people will, and you want to keep your calories high and keep them in a good spot. So let me look up that video though. Oh, okay, how to mini cut and when it's okay. And remember too, like, I get a lot of requests for videos. I've done videos on practically everything you can ever imagine at this point. Not that I'm not willing to redo stuff. I redo stuff all the time because once you've done 800 videos, you kind of have to repeat topics sometimes. But if there's ever anything you want to know about, just search my name in YouTube, Colin DeWaay, and then whatever that topic is, and there's like a friggin' 90% chance that I've done a video on it. And just always keep that in mind if you ever want to know any more information. Not that you can ask me questions. Ask me questions as much as you want. I always respond to every comment I ever get, except for spammy stuff, and I'm happy to do that. So, but replies to comments can never give you near the helpful detail and information that you get from a full video. How much cardio would I drop then during that 1 month break? Around 30 to 50%. Most of the time, it kind of depends on how much cardio you're doing. The more cardio you're doing, the less of a percentage you typically make, just because like there's a big difference between a 50% drop in cardio from 2 hours a week versus 6 hours a week, right? Like if you're only doing an hour of cardio, you might even keep it the same. Like if you're doing very little cardio, then you might even just keep it the same or make a small drop. You know, so if you go for an hour, maybe you do 30 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe even just keep the hour. That's fine. You're barely doing anything anyways. But if you're doing tons and tons of cardio, then making more of a 30% drop, maybe up to 50, and you can kind of taper it too. Like you can kind of test the waters and say like, say you're doing 4 hours of cardio, maybe you do 2.5, and then maybe you do 2. You know what I mean? Again, no right or wrong answers. It depends too, like if you'd rather have more calories or less cardio. But I do think it's a good idea to drop your cardio usually around 30 to 50% during an actual diet break. Hey, at what point in the reverse do you consider it being a bulking phase, or are these terms somewhat synonymous? So they're not synonymous, but they can be at the same time. So like if someone's going into a building phase after a cutting phase, the reverse diet kind of turns into a bulk kind of naturally. So like in the beginning stages of the reverse diet, what you're doing is you're undoing the suppression of your metabolism from the dieting that you've just done. And eventually over time, now you're going to get back up to your normal maintenance calories. And as you continue to increase, now you're going to go into a little bit of a surplus. And then once you start gaining an appropriate amount of weight for your particular goals, now you kind of hold those higher calories until your body adapts to that and it becomes your new maintenance. As you continue to gain weight, then you'll make another small increase, and that will keep that process going. So at first, and again, it depends on what's most important to you. If you want to start into an actual build sooner, then you're going to increase your calories faster and you get there faster. You can even go right to maintenance. Now, keep in mind, maintenance calories is a moving target. So just because it's your maintenance after your cutting phase doesn't mean that's your normal maintenance. That will come up as you increase your calories. But I find that the transition kind of happens naturally, and you don't need a huge surplus to build extra muscle. Like, if you're eating a 100 or 200 calorie surplus, that's going to be good enough for most people to build as much muscle as they need. Whereas you can do a 500 calories, 6, 7, 8,000 calorie surplus, you're going to gain weight a lot faster, but you're not necessarily going to gain any additional muscle that you would have built in a smaller surplus. So these like big dirty bulks or whatever aren't very advisable unless you have some sort of specific performance sport goal where the extra weight could be advantageous to you, right? Like maybe a strong man or whatever else. But the reverse will turn into a bulk in time. It's just one phase, and this is you could call it semantics a little bit, but in one case it's about undoing the suppression of the metabolism, and the other case it's about being in a surplus to optimally build. And keep in mind too, like if you wanted to make any arguments right after a diet, you're probably going to have a really hard time building muscle anyways, just because anytime you're done with the dieting phase, your hormones are going to be off, your testosterone is going to be low, and things like that. Your anabolic hormones aren't going to be in a great place, making it a little bit harder to build muscle, right? Not impossible, but harder. Very welcome. Thanks for watching. I have a history of chronic dieting and currently reverse dieting. Is it possible to gain weight when you mistakenly decrease your calories for a few days? I'm not sure I'm understanding that. Is it possible to gain weight when you mistakenly decrease your calories? No. I mean, unless that decrease is still a surplus for you, right? Like, if you're gaining weights, you could reduce your calories a little bit and it still could technically be a surplus, but it'd be less of a surplus than if you were eating more. But eating less calories isn't going to make you gain more body fat than when you had higher calories, right? Like, it's still about calories in versus calories out. It's just with the chronic dieting, you have a suppression in your metabolism, so it makes it easier to gain, but lower calories by in and of itself does not cause fat gain. I have an older video. It got some traction for a while, and it has since died off, which I'm almost kind of happy about because it was getting kind of annoying. But the title was something around the lines, and it was a little clickbaity, I get it, but I thought it was ethical clickbait because it wasn't inaccurate. The title was "Why Starving Yourself Makes You Fat" or fatter, something like that, right? And a lot of people would read that and then come on and make it the comment, "This is bullshit. You don't get fatter from starving yourself. Look at the starving people in Africa or whatever else." And they clearly didn't watch the video because I explained what I meant in the video. And what I meant and how starving yourself does make you fatter, it's not what you do when you starve yourself. It's what you do after you starve yourself. You slow your metabolism down, and then what you do after that. Because if you trash your metabolism and your body gets used to barely eating anything and it's guarding against it, so now your maintenance calories is like, less than 1,000, but then you say, screw this, I can't take it anymore. You start eating 2,000 calories every single day. Well, you're going to gain weight in a freaking hurry because that's now become a massive surplus for you because of what you've done with the starvation. So you can always create a calorie deficit. There's always a level of calories that is low enough that you will lose weight. Doesn't mean that you should eat that low of calories. No, but it can be done. Otherwise, starvation literally would not exist. And it's like, you could look back at the old study, the Minnesota starvation study, and take a look at those guys and say, tell me that starving yourself makes you fat. No, it's what starving usually means for people is short bouts of barely even eating, followed by large bouts of overeating, and thus gaining a lot of weight. But if you kept your calories down, you would continue to lose weight until your body eventually adapted to that, and then that would become your maintenance. So let's just say, for instance, you ate 1,000 calories a day and you were losing weight like crazy, and you just every single day you ate the exact same thing. There's no difference in macros or energy levels or anything else. You just did everything exactly the same every single day, and you're losing weight like crazy, right? Eventually, as your metabolism slows down, as your body starts to guard against it, your hormones start to alter and things like that, eventually that 1,000 calories plus the same amount of activity will now become your maintenance calories because your body has now adapted to that. Okay, but if you continue to eat those 1,000 calories, you will not gain weight. You will maintain weight. You won't lose weight anymore, but you won't gain weight anymore either. It's through the constant 1,000, F it, 3,000, 5,000, 8,000, 4,000 calories. That's how you gain weight really fast. Overeating after undereating is a disaster. Over a big picture. Okay, one day is never going to make or break anything. You can always get back on track, but it's that extreme crash dieting. It's why it's such a disaster. It's why I'm always telling you to not do it and try to think big picture and be patient, because it's just an absolute disaster. So hopefully I understood your question and it made sense, and hopefully that tangent was well received. Very welcome. My calories were too low for a few months and I just began tapering my calories back up to maintenance. Should I remain there for the same amount of time I was at the low levels to repair metabolism? Yes, at the very minimum. Now, like I said before, your maintenance calories is a moving target, so what your maintenance is now may not be a great maintenance to go back into a cut for. I don't know what your personal maintenance would be, but I definitely recommend the absolute bare minimum of time of reverse dieting / holding higher calories is the amount of time you cut. And again, the longer you can take, the better. You're way better off doing 1.5, 2 times or more. For me, so I understand it's a different situation for me because I've been doing this forever now, and I'm in a good place, metabolically, mentally, all the type of stuff. But at this point, I only cut for 12 to 16 weeks, once a year at the most, usually twice every 2 years now. So 12 to 16 weeks out of 2 years is like freaking nothing, right? But because I'm in such a good place, whenever I do go to cut now, my body responds so well because it's always in a great place. The longer you can wait, the better off you're going to be. So I understand that that's not a realistic scenario for a lot of people right now. It can be in the future if you have a big enough time frame. And this is where a lot of people struggle, is their time frames are always way too small. You can get to these places. It's just going to take time, and you may have to be more aggressive for quite a while to get where you want to be, and then reverse out and then hold time. And it might take multiple phases of this, but eventually you'll get to that place. And the less you have to lose, the more you can be patient with those things, but you still never want to rush it. Okay, so around 2,800 calories for maintenance now used to be 3,500, but consider too, you also lost 40 pounds, which congrats, that's fantastic. As you weigh less, you're going to need less calories too, because you don't have as much energy demand. You're not carrying around as much weight, so your maintenance calories will go down. Like, yes, whenever you finish a cutting phase, your metabolism is going to be suppressed. Some of that is just from the dieting. Some of that is just from being lighter now and not needing as many calories. So that's always to be considered. So things to look for with your maintenance before you start a cut again are signs like it's more about paying attention to what are your hunger signals look like. Are you finding yourself still overly food focused, hungry all the time, never feeling like you can ever be full? What are your energy levels like? Do you feel like you're recovering well? Do you find that you're sleeping well? Are you overly agitated and moody a lot? Are you still cold a lot? Things like this. You want to be in a good place before you start your cut again. So if you go into it and you're still feeling really hungry and everything, and getting a lot of these negative side effects, you're not recovered yet. That's more of an indicator than pure amount of calories is. And a pure amount of calories can be, at one point can feel like not enough calories, and another point feel like too many calories. And one of the best indicators of you're in a really good place is that you're overly full, like all the time. Like the thought of eating more food like makes you like want to vomit because you're just like, oh, I'm so full. And not a lot of people have the patience to get there. But what I meant by it's not necessarily about the same amount of calories. I did a video about this a long time ago after a cutting phase I did with Paul Ravella, and I was on the most calories I'd ever been in my entire life. It was 3,300 calories as a daily average at that point. And I think I was 20 some weeks into my reverse, but I had also dieted for 26, 28 weeks or whatever it had been. And I was still like just ravenously hungry, just super, super hungry all the time. But I was gaining at an appropriate rate for a building phase too. And so we didn't really want to increase calories. And I was willing to stick with it because goals, right? And at a certain point, though, we stayed in those same calories, and then all of a sudden, like 1 week out of the blue, like a light switch flipped. All of a sudden, I was stuffed. Like I went from ravenously hungry to overly full in 1 week. And what's the difference? I think the amount of time that I had been out of a deficit had been as much as in the deficit. So a little bit more evidence for that. I think B, I had gained weight more to be closer to what my body fat set point was. So leptin had recovered some, and I was I was closer to my body fat set point, which makes the body happier. And I think a lot of it though is just the length of time out of a diet, and my hunger hormones had finally gotten back into a good place again. So just because you're on a certain amount of calories doesn't necessarily mean that that's the very thing that will make you more or less hungry. Your hormone levels will impact that more than the amount of calories. When your hunger hormones are so screwed up, it's almost like there isn't an amount of calories that would ever be enough. And I'm sure you've probably been there. I think we've all been there at some point where it's like it wouldn't matter if you were dieting on 1,500 calories and now you're at 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 calories. It doesn't matter. You're hungry. You just want to eat, and that's because your body wants to get you back to that body fat set point. It wants you to gain weight back. Your leptin is still low, your ghrelin is still high, and your hormones are all jacked up, and that's signaling to your body, eat, 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 eat. So it's not your fault. You're not doing anything wrong. It's one more reason why the more aggressive, harsh crash dieting is such a terrible idea. Cool, glad it made sense. All right, I think I got one left. Any other questions, post them before I'm done here. And, I don't think I can scroll down more, so let me hide myself. I'm on a cut. I have food left at the end of the day, but I'm not hungry. Should I eat it anyways? You know, it just depends. So one thing you can do is just save those up. So if you find that you're not very hungry and you've got, say, 100 calories left, 200 calories left, save them. Bake them up for a different day. There's probably going to be a different day where you're more hungry, or maybe there's going to be a day on the weekend where you're going to want some extra flexibility. You're going out to eat and you want to be able to enjoy more and things like that. So go ahead and save them up. You don't want to like binge and restrict to get to your average calories for the week. You don't want to like, if your calories were 1,500, you wouldn't want to eat 3,000 one day and not eat the next day. You know what I mean? But to a degree, how you want to break up your calories is pretty well up to you. So the one danger for some people, they save up, and then they get to the end of the week and they're like, well, I'm still not that hungry, and now you're well short. So you want to do what you can to make sure you're hitting your numbers within a range of your numbers by the end of the week. But it's never about your singular days, and everyone's different. Some people struggle to keep their calories down. Some people struggle to keep their calories up. Like, everyone's so different. But if you struggle to hit your numbers because you keep under eating, because you're not overly hungry, then you may want to do what you can to eat more and eat some less filling foods. Sometimes people struggle with getting all their calories in because they eat so dang clean that it's like they're eating nothing but hard to digest, super voluminous, super filling foods, and they're just overly full. So including some things that aren't so filling into your diet will help with that, and could be a value, or even just drinking like a full calorie Gatorade during your workout or something. If you don't want to do that, like just do that and help with performance in the gym and get your calories in without being too full. But you can eat it if you'd like to, or you can save it up if you'd like to. There's no right or wrong answer, but do your best to hit your weekly numbers. If I'm staying around 6'1", and I find my sweet spot around 2,400 calories. Yeah, that's what I mean. Everyone's so different. And people got to be careful too. Like, someone might look at you and go, okay, like, well, I'm 195 pounds and I'm 6'1", but I feel starving at 3,500 calories, or I'm full at 2,000 calories. You know, like, we're all so different. We can take TDE calculators and all these calculators in the world, but they're irrelevant. Everyone's so different. So I have a saying that high and low calories is relative, right? So like, for one person, even at the same size, 1,500 calories may feel like freaking starvation levels, and for another person, they might be freaking stuffed at 1,500 calories. So never look at what somebody else is doing and feel like, oh man, I can't eat that much, or how can they eat that much, or how I would be starving, or whatever else. Like, your levels are specific to you, and again, your hormone levels. So I think that's it. I will give it another minute here. If there's anything else, quickly do it now, or forever hold your peace. And as a reminder, follow me on Instagram right here, Colin DeWaay, and get all the posts. And if you're interested in online coaching, fill out this application on my website, or if it's not working, like I said, you can go to my link tree on Instagram, and this application will definitely work. And what you do is you fill out the application. It sends me an email. What I do is I take that email and I shoot a video kind of going over it, giving you my thoughts, talking about your investment costs and your different options and things like that, and what I think is going to be appropriate for you. And then I email you back that video. So it unfortunately oftentimes lands in junk/spam folders. So if you don't hear back from me within 24 hours, check your junk folder. It's probably in there, and then make sure you whitelist me and check that, because I always get back within 24 hours, except July 2nd. I'm heading to Switzerland with my family for almost 2 weeks. So if it's between July 2nd and the middle of July, then I won't be getting back to you within 24 hours. But before then, we'll get you all set up and everything. So anything else? Looks like there's one more. Once after the diet break is done, do you go back to your normal cardio routine, or do you slowly go up again? Go back to your cardio routine, if not even more. Hold on one second. So yeah, it kind of depends. Like, if you're losing well, I typically recommend going right back to what you were doing pre-diet break, and that should get things going. If you've hit a plateau, then take the diet break and then make your adjustment down from what you did previously to the diet break to really help get things going. But if you want a little bit more detail on how to set up your diet breaks, how to adjust your cardio, how to adjust your calories, and all that, I have this video called How to Diet Break Your Step-by-Step Guide. Check that one out, and it'll walk you through the process. So I think that's it. So thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions after this, just leave a comment in the video and I'll certainly get back to you. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Let me see if I can end this.